Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, and it is time to preview the 2020 French Open. Sorry for the delay, everyone. Better late than never. Very, very busy week. So the draw came out Thursday. Today is Sunday. There are some matches that have already been played. In fact, I believe the only men's match still out there might be Zverev and Denis Novak, and that's tight in the first set as I'm recording this. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I'll watch it as soon as I'm done with this. But yeah, just keep that in mind. There are some matches in the books, but I will go quarter by quarter with this year's French Open preview. I will start by talking about the conditions. There is a lot to discuss on that front. And talk about what I'm looking for, the players who I feel will have success at the French, the players who I feel will have less success at the French. This is the thumbnail. And in the thumbnail, you can see some of the things that we'll be dealing with over the next 2 weeks in Paris. One, there is tons of rain in the forecast. Now, Roland Garros now has roofs on, I think, the top 2 courts, but I know on Philippe Chatrier, at least, there is a roof. There are also lights on 12 courts at Roland Garros this year. So if there are rain delays, they can push matches later in the day. There's not even a curfew like there is at Wimbledon, so there's the potential that the players that play can go on very, very late into the night. There is also the weather factor outside of the precipitation in the forecast is the temperature, which is way, way cooler than what we're used to when the French Open is played at its normal June time frame. It's really, really cold, and you saw players and fans in winter jackets coming out onto the court today, and that is going to change things immensely. Last but not least, and what's really been the most significant storyline early on is the tennis balls. Going from this ball right here, a Babolat tennis ball, to your Wilson tennis ball. I don't know if I guess it's not the Wilson US Open tennis balls, but look, I've discussed this, and I don't even know what video it was, but I just remember I went over this. I play with both of these balls a lot. This ball is nothing like this ball. This ball is heavy and fluffy, and it just feels like it's got that extra weight to it, and it just kind of travels slower through the air. This ball is very lively and bouncy. And I was watching the highlights of Kitzbühel today, just going over some matches. Wanted to check out some highlights of Kitzbühel because I didn't watch it much that week while I was watching some Roland Garros tennis. And it was almost like the difference between a racquetball and a squash ball. Anyone who's ever played those two sports, it's like the opposite spectrum. I mean, Kitzbühel was playing so much more lively than the French. All things considered, cold weather, night tennis, Wilson balls instead of the Babolat balls. It is some of the slowest conditions I have ever seen. The ball is not bouncing, and the ball is not really skidding through the court either. So it's kind of this double-edged, like, kind of dead ball tennis, I'd say. And I don't want to get into if I agree with the or how I personally feel about the conditions, because that's kind of neither here nor there. You guys can say in the comments that you're happy about the conditions or that you're furious with the conditions. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to kind of tell you what I'm seeing, and it is the slowest, deadest, heaviest conditions that I have seen in a really, really long time. So what will that mean? I think there's kind of two vantage points. First, I'll just say, look, what you're looking for in a player that's going to be successful is someone who can play defense effectively and someone who can play offense effectively. And what that means is someone who can take advantage of the slow conditions, someone who is quick around the court, a good, comfortable mover on clay, and who has good racket skills from defensive positions and is comfortable in the corners hitting out of the run. Those players will be able to take advantage of their skill sets very well in the slow conditions, because in the case that they will have to D up and just try to become a wall from the baseline and make their opponent play extra shots, they will have success doing that. So I think that there are, heaps of players who could have a lot of success kind of D'ing up in these conditions and playing defensively. There are a much smaller select groups of a smaller select group of players who will also be able to play aggressive tennis in these conditions. Those are the players who I'm kind of highlighting. Those are the players who I'm thinking will have a lot of success over the course of the next 2 weeks, because clay court tennis is no longer a grind fest. Obviously, there was a long period of time where you had clay court specialists doing really, really well at the French Open. And even if you look at the play style of Bjorn Borg when he was winning the French Open, it was very much about attrition, very much about keeping the ball in the court, playing defense, being consistent, and outlasting your opponent. That hasn't been clay court tennis in a very, very long time. And just because the conditions are extraordinarily slow does not mean that I think clay court tennis is going to revert to what it was at this year's French Open. I don't expect to see that. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm thinking that clay court tennis has increasingly become a power game. It's been about power. It's been about sustained aggression. And I think that we're going to see a modified version of that. So who are the players who, yes, they are quick around the court. They can take advantage of the slow conditions and play excellent defense. That's going to be a lot of players. Who are those select few players who can actually play good attacking tennis with consistency? And these are the players who are the strongest, heaviest hitting players on tour, with one caveat. That caveat is the court is not going to respond to topspin as much as it has in the past. So while you look at players like Nadal, a player like Nadal who has a tremendous amount of power but has also benefited from the tremendously high bounce and lively bounce that he has had at the French Open, he will not really have that anymore. So I like power. I think power is going to be important, but it's also going to be very important to be able to flatten out the ball, to be able to play in the midcourt, perhaps finish points at the net. But really, more than anything, I think that this court will require some flatter hitting at times, or I should say these courts, not just this court. So power, yes. Topspin, a little bit less so. Variety, probably required more so, and defense and movement will be a requirement as always on a slow court. With that being said, let's get into quarter by quarter analysis. If you are new to the channel, here's how I do things. I will tell you the top seeds in each quarter. I will tell you who I believe will be competing for a semifinal spot to exit that quarter the victor. Then I will tell you who I believe is a dark horse, which is the player who is unseeded, who I have deemed to be the most dangerous unseeded player. Then the upset alert, the seeded player, who I believe is most likely to lose early. Then your early popcorn match, the matchup in the first couple rounds that I am most looking forward to watching. And we start with Novak Djokovic's quarter, which we have done for a long time now. He has been the one seed for many, many weeks, closing in on a record time. Novak Djokovic is in a quarter with Matteo Berrettini, with Roberto Bautista Agut, with Karen Khachanov, with Pablo Carreño Busta, with Christine Garin, and with Hubert Hurkacz. Berrettini is someone who I think can be really dangerous at the French. He is the highest seed in Novak Djokovic's quarter. He has the kind of power off the forehand wing that can hit through these conditions. He is big, he is strong, and he also has a shot in the backhand slice, which is going to be way more effective on clay than it usually is, because this is deader, low bouncing conditions. So I think that Berrettini can give Novak Djokovic, I think he's a tough player, one of the more difficult 4 through 8 seeds. RBA should love this as well, because RBA on a traditional clay court, the ball bounces too high for him, and he is not strong over the shoulders. No, he does not like that. He is not very good in bouncy conditions. But in the lower bouncing conditions, RBA should enjoy this. He's a little bit deprived of power, so I would look out for perhaps, him having trouble creating offense on this surface. But RBA should actually perhaps like these conditions more than a traditional French Open. Karen Khachanov should enjoy the extra time that he gets at this year's French Open. PCB, a better player on hard court. I'm not really circling him as a dangerous player here at the French. Christian Garin will be very disappointed in these conditions. He would rather the traditional lively French Open conditions, and Hubert Hurkacz would really rather a court surface that rewards his big serving a little bit more than this surface will. So my quarterfinal is Djokovic and Berrettini. I do have Novak Djokovic coming through. My dark horse, Guido Pella. I'm not really confident about this pick, but out of all of the unseeded players in this section, he is the player who I thought is probably the most skilled and the most dangerous player. He has Caruso Salvador in the first round, and then the winner of two players who I'm not very familiar with, Balazas and Yasutaka Uchiyama. So I think that Guido Pella has a good opportunity here. And I haven't seen him go deep in a major in a pretty long time. Hubert Hurkacz is my upset alert. Who does he have? Oh, he's got Tennys Sandgren, a player who is pretty good on the clay, pretty comfortable, grinding, doing some running, keeping the ball on the court. So that should be kind of a dogfight. And early popcorn, Berrettini versus Pospisil. And the reason I have that match circled is because Vasek Pospisil, who does prefer hard court, no doubt, his run at the U.S. Open was really impressive because I don't think he got too much help from his opponents. I just thought it was an unbelievable level. Big man tennis, big serve, big forehand, bold, net rushing with frequency. I mean, that was just really good big man tennis that Vasek Pospisil played. So the level that he brought the U.S. Open, I mean, that's why I'll have this matchup circled. Berrettini, someone who I think can make some noise here against Pospisil. I'm just wondering how carefully we should be looking at Pospisil. Maybe he's about to make a run back into the top 30. I'm pretty sure he's been there before. So I have my eye on that matchup. The path for Novak Djokovic, let's highlight that real quick. Mikael Ymer, the Swede, in the first round. He's got some skills, but not nearly consistent enough to challenge Djokovic. Rob Berankis, someone who played Djokovic pretty close at the Western and Southern Open. Tennys Sandgren, the winner of Cam Norrie, Tennys Sandgren, two players who really can't hurt Novak at all. Djokovic is very comfortable. Christine Garin or Karen Khachanov. I actually have Garin, but I don't know. Maybe it will be Khachanov. I'm having second thoughts when I look at that. Nonetheless, either player, I'd say as far as round of 16 matches go, pretty comfortable for Novak. He'll be pretty happy with those guys. And then Matteo Berrettini in the quarterfinal. I do think that Berrettini, if he gets hot and it's not Novak's day, Berrettini is a player who can really trouble Novak. But I will say this is a surface where the serve can be neutralized. So I would say, if this were a grass court, this would be more dangerous for I don't even know if that's true, man. Djokovic is I love Djokovic on grass these days. So I don't know, but I do think that Berrettini is an uncomfortable matchup, but Djokovic should be able to neutralize the serve so often. It should, become a baseline duel, and then Novak could pick him apart. I could see it happening if he's at his best. Djokovic could, if he's at his best, pick Berrettini apart from the baseline. But that forehand is not something Djokovic will be really keen on dealing with in these kind of conditions, because Berrettini will have really the biggest weapon on the court in this case. Let's move on to Daniil Medvedev's quarter. A lot being made out of Daniil Medvedev's form. He has not won a matchup at the French. He lost first round in Rome. So people really down, really kind of trashing Medvedev's clay court prowess. And I was early on that bandwagon because it is true that Medvedev is really offensively deprived on such a slow surface. So I don't think these conditions help him at all. However, Medvedev can beat a lot of players just keeping the ball in the court, doing some running, and being more poised and more consistent. So he has that defense. He has the ability to trade. It's just against players who can do that equally as well. That's where there's going to be issues for Medvedev. And against players who can actually create a lot of pace with a lot of with comfort and ease, those are the players who will bother Medvedev. But let's not act like he's a scrub just because he's on clay. Let's not act like that. In Daniil Medvedev's quarter is Stefanos Tsitsipas, who made the finals of Hamburg and lost in a closely contested matchup to Andrey Rublev, who is also in this quarter, along with Denis Shapovalov, the Canadian, who made a good run in Rome to the semifinal. Also, Grigor Dimitrov and Filip Krajinovic. Krajinovic, a good player on clay as well. So this is kind of your next-gen quarter, right? You have Tsitsipas, you have Shapovalov, you have Rublev, you have Medvedev. Those are your top seeds. They're all bundled up. It's the next-gen quarter. This seems to happen all the time. I don't know why. Or maybe it's just me. I always think there's a big serving quarter, but I don't think there is in this draw. There's the big serving quarter, where it's like, oh, all the big servers are together. And then there is the next-gen quarter. This is the next-gen quarter. Shapovalov is the player who stands out here. Shapovalov and Rublev. They are the kind of players who I really think they're the players I'm highlighting, I'm circling, because they have unbelievable racket acceleration. Some of the best on tour. And that gives them the ability to be potent on slow bouncing courts because they don't need to redirect pace. They can create all of it on their own. The reason I go with Shapovalov, I give him the nod, is because I'm concerned about Rublev playing long and hard for a week in Hamburg leading up to Roland Garros. And I remember how players fared who went far at the Western and Southern Open. No one at the Western and Southern Open who made the semifinal went past the first week at the U.S. Open. I don't expect that to really happen again with Hamburg, and I know that with Djokovic you have a bit of a fluky situation, but the point kind of stands. I think there is a reason why players do not play the week before a major under normal circumstances. So I think that's a tough one. I look at Rublev and Shapovalov. I think Rublev has a little bit more consistency. I think Shapovalov has a bit more flair and better net play, which could help him finish points on the slower surface. But still, it's kind of a toss-up. I was going back and forth, but I'm going to go with Shapovalov, the player who got the week of rest before the French Open. Laslo Djere is my dark horse. Big, strong player who's a good mover on the clay, and this is his favorite surface. Daniil Medvedev, upset alert. Let's take a look at Medvedev and who he'll have to face early, because that's very important. Marton Fucsovic in the first round. That's brutal. Fucsovic is an incredibly fit player. He's got top 10 fitness. He will go 5 sets with you happily. He will grind with you happily. And that's a problem for Medvedev. If Fucsovic has a good forehand day, his forehand is kind of hot and cold. It can go either way. He will be willing to run. He will be willing to grind. So that could be a tough one. Mannarino or Albert Ramos Vinolas. I think it'll be Mannarino. Mannarino, another player. I mean, man, they're going to have long rallies. That's going to be tough. That's going to be annoying for both players because both of those players want to redirect pace. Both of those players don't really accelerate much. After that, Medvedev could face That's actually a really weak section. You have Basilashvili there. Basilashvili has the strength. I mean, he's just not playing good tennis. Normally, I'd say these are good conditions for Basilashvili, really one of the biggest hitters on tour off of both sides. So maybe Basilashvili, that could be an interesting matchup. He's just not playing well recently. I haven't seen him play well in a very long time. So I actually kind of I have Montero, but I don't know how confident I am with that. So maybe an easy third rounder for Medvedev, and then Rublev or Lajovic. Did I mention Lajovic? Oh, I missed Lajovic. Lajovic is also a seed in this quarter. Another really strong player, a big hitter off both sides. Lajovic will love these conditions. This is a tough quarter and a really interesting quarter. It'll be fun to watch. So Lajovic is, if I had a dark horse among the seeded players, it would be Dusan Lajovic. So upset alert, Daniil Medvedev. Early popcorn, Rublev versus Davidovich Fokina. We'll see how Fokina does on the heels of his really strong U.S. Open run to the quarterfinals. And we'll see how Rublev responds a day after the Hamburg match. The reason that's early popcorn is I think we could see that get close and get interesting. Rublev hopes not, because Rublev wants to have quick, easy matches. Shout out to Andrey Rublev, though. I mean, if you really just look at his results, the consistency that he's had in 2020, the win percentage that he's had in 2020, elite stuff from Andrey Rublev. I know some of you still don't believe. You should. Quarterfinal, Shapovalov over Rublev. Let's move on to Dominic Thiem's quarter. One of the big headlines when this draw came out is how difficult Dominic Thiem's draw is. I will dissect that. Let's see if that's really true, or if that's just more of a kind of a narrative that people ran with that doesn't have much to it. Top seeds, Dominic Thiem, Gael Monfils, who I want to talk about for a second. Monfils was in great form after the Australian Open, again, for the second straight year. And last year, 2019, it was kind of derailed with an injury. And then this year, it was derailed by, of course, the pandemic. And now Monfils has no momentum. He's losing first round. I know in the last two tournaments he's played, he's lost first round. It's just such a shame that we've seen Monfils play some really good tennis after the Aussie, and then I feel like his momentum is gone when it's time for the majors again. He's got the strength to hit through these courts. He's got the defense, but he's in no form at all. Diego Schwartzman is in this quarter. He'll be dangerous for sure. Stan Wawrinka is a player, man. If I did my French Open power rankings again, you bet he'd be in there. These are perfect conditions for Stan, one of the strongest players on tour, can hit through the heavy conditions easily. Then you have FAA, still not really consistent enough, in my opinion, to go deep in conditions this slow. Borna Coric he's already lost today. Taylor Fritz, he will not really be enjoying these conditions. And Casper Ruud is one of those cases where he just can't flatten the ball out. He hits with heavy topspin. He doesn't really have any other way to hit the ball, and it's just not going to be rewarded, which is really, it's a shame for Ruud, because he is strong, he is powerful, which makes him so dangerous on, in traditional high bouncing, more lively clay court conditions, but this isn't really it for him, I don't think. He's still dangerous because he's in great form. He does have really good power and the ability to push people around the court on a clay court, and he can find really good angles, and he's a good mover, and very soon he'll be a top 10 player on clay, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm concerned about his ability to flatten the ball out. Quarterfinal, I think Thiem comes through Schwartzman, and I'll take a closer look at Thiem's draw, but I really think Diego is the player who Thiem should be nervous about. And I think before then, it's a lot of big names, but I don't really know if there's reason to be really concerned. Let's take a look at Thiem's path, okay? Shall we? Dominik Thiem has Marin Cilic in the first round. I just don't think that's all that concerning. Thiem has played Cilic a bunch. He knows exactly what to expect. He beat him in New York pretty easily. I think he did drop a set. Did he drop a set? But I don't think that outcome was ever in doubt. And Marin Cilic just isn't playing very well. Riley Opelka in the second round, big server. I don't think he's very comfortable on the clay. I know that it's not the most comfortable matchup, but as long as as long as Domi gets some serves in, it's not that difficult a matchup for Thiem. And look, again, it's a tough matchup, okay? Because if Thiem, I'm saying that Thiem should win these matches, not that these players aren't challenging. Opelka is challenging. Casper Ruud, I've talked about him. Yeah, it could be difficult. It could. But it also might not be. Then he could get Stan. And Stan could push Thiem if he's not having a great day. But I just don't know that Stan's in amazing form. He did look very good today against Andy Murray. But let's see what kind of tennis Stan is able to play, if he's able to play his best tennis. Then he plays Diego Schwartzman. So does Thiem have a tough draw? Yeah, he does. If you really look at it, there's a lot of players in here that are strong, that are powerful, that have weapons. And I do think that there's the potential that Dominic Thiem will have to exert a lot of energy early on in this tournament, which is not ideal, especially with 2 weeks off after, for sure, the most emotionally and physically draining tournament of Dominic Thiem's career. So I think the draw is a factor with Thiem, and definitely if you're a Thiem fan, you are kind of holding your breath and you're kind of nervous. Now I think he's good enough, and I think these conditions put Thiem. I think he needs to make some adjustments. He probably needs to advance his court position, take the ball a little bit earlier than he usually does, and flatten the ball out a little bit more than he usually does. But if Thiem's able to recognize that, he's got the assets. He's got the strength to hit through these courts. So I think that these conditions could be good for Thiem. And I know it's not bouncy, and I know it's not what he likes or what he thinks is good for him, but I still think it could be good for him. Dark horse Tommy Paul. Not very confident in that one. Not confident, but he's the unseeded player who I thought might have a chance. Upset alert, it was clearly Borna Coric. He's already out. And then early popcorn. Let's see Ruud versus Tommy Paul. Let's see that one for round 2. I guess the popcorn matchups here, though, is really, it's all about Dominic Thiem, and does he get through this gauntlet? I do think he does. We end things with Rafa Nadal's quarter. His top seeds are Alexander Zverev, David Goffin, Fabio Fognini, John Isner, Benoit Paire, and Alex de Minaur. Am I missing one? Why do I have a comma there? Alex de Minaur is the 25 seed. Oh, Dan Evans. Dan Evans is the last one. Dan Evans lost to Kei Nishikori, so that was a really good match. 5-setter, long match. Good to see Kei back from his injury in the win column. Conditions that don't suit Dan Evans at all. Zverev, I got to see what's going on after I'm done with this video. He's got Denis Novak. For Zverev, it's just this wide range of levels. I think if Zverev plays his best level, he's got big power, which is a necessity, as I've been saying throughout this entire video, throughout this entire show. Big power is a necessity on these courts, but he's also got the defensive abilities, the counter-attacking abilities, and the ability to wall up, which will really help him. So he's got the full package, and I think if he plays his best, he's probably the 4th best player in this draw. But he can also has this kind of what's it called? This I'm the word is escaping me. But this massive range, and if he plays long matches early, which he can do, and he's been known to do at the French, that won't be good for him. So let's see if he even makes it to Nadal. But if he does, that could be fun. David Goffin is out. Fabio Fognini, I don't know. I don't know how he'll feel about these conditions. That's interesting. He doesn't strike me as the most powerful player in the world, but he does have a lot of pop for his size, and he does take the ball very early, and he is very offensive. I actually think he's gonna actually think he could be dangerous. John Isner is John Isner. Benoit Paire is just in a terrible mental state of mind right now, and he won't have much of a chance, and Alex de Minaur is out. Dark horse is Jannik Sinner. Talk about a player who can just absolutely crack the ball off both wings. He was so impressive taking out David Goffin in straight sets. Watch out for Sinner. Another thing about Sinner is his quickness is what I'm not really seeing yet, and he just doesn't get into the corners fast enough. But these slow conditions will give him just extra time to cover the court, get into the corners, and even his big backswing on his forehand. The slower conditions will really help him, I think, hit out of the corners. So Jannik Sinner, this is a prime tournament for Sinner to make some noise and to break out in a major for the first time. Early popcorn, round 2, Sinner versus Ruusuvuori, the Finn. Just a good matchup between two young players, but I heavily favor Sinner in that one. Let's take a look at Rafael Nadal's path and who Rafa has, the number 2 seed and the favorite in this tournament, although a lot of people now counting him out because of these conditions. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Nadal has, I've watched this guy play, but I don't want to butcher his name, but Igor Gerasimov, I don't know, Belarus, first round. Mackie McDonald in the second. Kei Nishikori perhaps in the third round, or maybe Pablo Andujar, who has a win over Nadal, I want to say, but I forget when, but I feel like he's got a win over Nadal on clay. John Isner is a possibility. Fabio Fognini is a possibility. Fognini is someone, wait a second. Oh, I totally messed up here. Yeah. I actually think I have Fognini probably meeting Nadal. Okay, that's one to circle. That's one to watch. Nadal doesn't want to see Fognini here. Fognini can take that backhand early on the rise, do some damage with that shot. So Nadal will need to figure that out. And then, of course, Zverev and in the quarterfinals, or maybe Sinner. So there's some. Fognini is really the only one who I'm really circling, because by the time you hit the quarterfinal, of course it's going to be tough. In fact, I don't know if any of the seeds. I kind of like a lot of players here. I like Berrettini. I like Rublev. I like Schwartzman. I don't think that there are any quarterfinal matchups that I see in this draw and I say, ooh, that top seed got lucky because they have an easy quarterfinal. I just don't see that. I will say that I expect to see Nadal, Djokovic, or Thiem lose before the semifinals. This is too wacky. The conditions are too crazy, too weird, too erratic to see all the favorites get through this. I think we're going to see upsets. So when I make my picks, this is what I think is most likely, but I really don't think we're going to see that. Let us move on to the final weekend, where I have Djokovic beating Shapovalov in 5 sets, Nadal beating Thiem in 4 sets, Nadal meeting Djokovic in the final and coming through in 5. With Thiem, I actually think his best level would probably be enough to win the French Open. I don't think he has a chance to bring it because of his difficult draw and because of the monumental task that will be physically and mentally recovering from the U.S. Open and playing this French Open without a lot of time to adjust. So I don't think Thiem is going to be able to really have all the, when Thiem is knocked out of the tournament, I would be willing to bet his energy reserves are not at 100%. So that's why I don't see him. That's why I really favor Nadal. Djokovic, a lot of people are saying these conditions are great for Novak Djokovic. I'm just really skeptical about that. Djokovic will appreciate the lower bounce. And I'm not gonna get into these hypothetical matchups and really dissect them as if they're gonna happen, because I don't like to do that because they might not happen. But I will say that Djokovic in really lively court conditions can have trouble protecting his contact point because sometimes the ball can get up high on him, especially on the backhand. And he'd much rather that not happen. So that's good for Djokovic. But the slow conditions are not good for Novak, who, against a lot of players on tour, will face a power deficiency. And he didn't have this, really, in the early 2010s, where Novak just had more pace, more pop on his forehand. And he's been missing that recently. He doesn't quite have that at all times. Therefore, between the diminished pace on his forehand and a little bit less physicality and endurance, which takes away his ability to really grind on these courts, man, I don't like the slow conditions for Novak. I don't think that helps him. For Nadal, he will have to adjust. Nadal will have to flatten things out. Nadal will have to go to the net more, which he's been more than willing to do. I mean, look at the French Open final against Thiem last year. Trouble hitting through Dominic? Okay. Nadal just really won at the net. Mixed in the slice backhand. Play up closer to the baseline, which I think Nadal will have to do. Flatten it out. Do more damage with his backhand, which he, I would say, is more comfortable flattening out his backhand than his forehand. All of these adjustments, Nadal will have to make. He will have to play differently. And these conditions will require every player to figure out how to win here. These are absurd conditions. They are wacky, okay? So all the players tinker what works, figure it out. Nadal's pretty darn good at that. I really trust Nadal to do well in that. So that's why he is still my favorite. I still trust Nadal. Nadal complained about the balls. He said, I hate these balls. He said they're bad for the body. But this is hardly the first time Nadal has come into the French Open and downplayed his chances. He does that every other year. So I'm not going to read into that. I'm not going to say Nadal's not going to win the French because he didn't seem confident in his press conference. No, I've seen this movie before. The conditions will be interesting. Who will figure out how to win here? There's a lot of uncertainty here. I know I said this after the U.S. Open. In my U.S. Open preview, I was completely wrong about the conditions because they played a lot slower than I thought they would. In this, I get the conditions. I know the conditions, but they are so out. They are so out in left field, these conditions. I'm not quite sure what the best way to win is going to be. But we are going to find out. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these things play out. Again, I don't really feel like saying after the tournament, I'll talk about if the French Open should try to maybe do something about the tennis balls or not. But these are, slowest, heaviest courts I've seen in a while. And eventually, by the way, we will stop talking about this. And we'll talk about the tennis, and the conditions are what the conditions are. Who is going to figure out how to win here? It's going to be intriguing. It's going to be fun. And I'm really looking forward to the next 2 weeks and the coverage here on Monday Match Analysis. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform if you haven't. Rate and review on Apple. I hope you enjoyed, and do not forget to subscribe.